Ferrari just tested something they didn't want anyone to notice, and it could completely change the Japanese Grand Prix. Not next month, not later this season, in just a few days. Because what leaked from inside Ferrari is not just an upgrade, it's a direct response to their biggest weakness, the one that already cost them time in Australia and again in China. A weakness that, if not fixed, could decide the entire season. But here's the part nobody is telling you. They already have the solution. They just haven't shown it yet. And if they bring it to Suzuka, Mercedes might finally have a real fight on their hands. But there's one detail, one critical flaw in this upgrade that could either win Ferrari the race or completely destroy their chances. And almost nobody has spotted it. Subscribe now, because what happens in Japan will make everything clear. We are just days away from Suzuka, and that is not just another race weekend. This is where everything starts to break or finally come together. Because Suzuka doesn't hide anything. It exposes weaknesses, it amplifies mistakes, and it punishes inefficiency like no other track on the calendar. High-speed corners that demand absolute confidence, long straights that punish every bit of drag, and a rhythm that forces the car to be perfectly balanced or completely fall apart. Now think about Ferrari, because after Australia and China, one pattern is impossible to ignore. They are fast, but only in certain moments. In the technical sections, the SF-26 looks alive, sharp, responsive, almost equal to Mercedes. But then comes the straight, and everything changes. The gap appears, small at first, then bigger, then impossible to recover. And Ferrari knows exactly where this is coming from. It's not just engine power. That would be easy to fix. This is deeper. Energy deployment, recovery systems, and the timing of when that energy runs out. Because here is what is really happening. Ferrari is losing speed at the worst possible point, right at the end of the straight, right when the car should be at its strongest. And that one detail is costing them tenths every lap. And those tenths turn into seconds, and those seconds decide races. But that is only the surface, because there is something else happening underneath, something much more subtle and much more dangerous. Ferrari can start strong. They can fight early. They can even look like contenders in the first phase of a stint. But then they fade. Not suddenly, not dramatically, just enough. Enough for Mercedes to slowly pull away, lap after lap. And that tells you something critical. This is not a single problem. This is a chain reaction. Energy affects straight-line speed. Straight-line speed affects overtaking. Overtaking affects tire life. Tire life affects race pace. And suddenly, everything is connected. Now here is where things get serious. Because Ferrari didn't just discover this after China. They already knew. Which means everything they are bringing to Japan has been designed with this exact problem in mind. And that leads directly to what they tried to hide. The test. The data, the upgrade that appeared and disappeared. Because what Ferrari is preparing for Suzuka is not just an improvement, it is an attempt to fix the core of the car. And if they get it right, this entire season could take a completely different direction. But if they get it wrong, then this weakness becomes permanent. And that is something Ferrari cannot afford. Not now, not at the start of a new era, and definitely not at a track like Suzuka, where the truth always comes out. But the upgrade itself is only half the story, because what Ferrari tested in China was never meant to be seen. It appeared briefly, ran for data, and then disappeared, almost like it was never there. But it was, and the people who noticed it realized something immediately. This was not a small tweak. This was a completely different approach to solving their biggest weakness. A rear wing, designed not just for downforce, but for survival on the straights. And here is where things get even more interesting. Because this wing is not static. It adapts. It changes behavior depending on the phase of the lap, reducing drag when the car needs speed, stabilizing when the car needs control. A balance Ferrari has been desperately trying to find. But here's the problem. In Formula One, nothing works in isolation. You don't just add a faster rear wing and suddenly gain performance. Everything must align. Front wing, floor, suspension, energy deployment, even the driver's inputs. And this is exactly where Ferrari hit a wall. Because when they tested this new concept, the rear of the car improved, but the front couldn't match it. And that creates a very dangerous situation. Oversteer in high speed. Instability in direction changes. A car that feels fast, but unpredictable. And drivers hate that, because confidence disappears. And when confidence disappears, lap time disappears with it. So Ferrari made a decision, not to rush it, not to gamble in China, but to wait, to study, to understand every detail before committing. And that tells you something very important. They are not chasing speed anymore. They are chasing control, because without control, speed is useless. Now here's where the story takes another turn, because while everyone is focused on this rear wing, Ferrari has been quietly adjusting something else, something that sounds small but isn't. Airflow, the way air moves around the car, the way it enters the engine, the way it feeds the entire system. Tiny components, placed in very specific areas, designed to clean turbulence, to make the airflow smoother, more efficient, and in a regulation where energy matters as much as power. That is everything, because cleaner airflow means better efficiency. Better efficiency means better deployment, and better deployment means more speed exactly where they were losing it, at the end of the straight. So now connect the dots. A new rear wing to reduce drag, micro aerodynamic changes to improve airflow, adjustments in energy deployment, all targeting the same weakness. This is not random development. This is a focused attack on the one area that has been holding Ferrari back. But here's the part that should concern everyone, because solving one problem can create another. If Ferrari reduces drag too much, they risk losing downforce in corners. If they push energy deployment harder, they risk running out even earlier. If the balance is not perfect, the car becomes unstable again, and Suzuka will expose that instantly. High-speed direction changes. No room for hesitation. No margin for error. This is not a track where you can hide imbalance. This is where drivers either trust the car completely, or they back off. And backing off means losing time. So now everything depends on one thing: integration. Not just bringing upgrades, but making them work together, at the same time, under pressure. And that is where Ferrari has struggled before. Not with ideas, not with innovation, but with execution. And this time, they don't have the luxury of getting it wrong. Because if this package works, they close the gap. If it doesn't, they fall further behind. And the most dangerous part is this: Mercedes is not standing still, which means Ferrari is not just racing against the clock. They are racing against a team that already solved the problem they are still trying to fix. And that is why what happens in Japan is not just important, it is decisive. But there's one layer deeper, the one that almost nobody is talking about. Because even if the upgrade works, even if the rear wing delivers more speed, even if the airflow improvements increase efficiency, there is still a fundamental problem Ferrari has not fully solved. Consistency, not over one lap, over an entire race. And this is where everything becomes much more complex. Because in China, something very specific happened. Ferrari looked competitive at the start. They stayed close. They fought. They even looked like they could challenge. But then, slowly the gap started to grow. Not because of one mistake. Not because of one bad lap. Because of a pattern. Lap after lap, Mercedes pulled away. And when you break that down, you find something very uncomfortable. Ferrari is losing more performance over time. More tire degradation, more energy instability, more drop in pace as the stint progresses. And this is where the real danger is hiding. Because upgrades like the rear wing, they can fix peak performance. They can give you more speed in a straight line. They can even help you defend or attack. But they do not automatically fix degradation. They do not automatically fix long run pace. And they definitely do not fix how the car behaves after 20 laps. So now imagine this scenario. Ferrari arrives in Suzuka with a faster car. They qualify better. They gain positions. They fight at the front. Everything looks different. But then the race begins to unfold. Lap 10, lap 15, lap 20, and the same pattern starts to appear. The tires begin to fade. The energy becomes harder to manage. The balance starts to shift. And suddenly, that advantage disappears. This is the trap, the illusion of improvement. Because being faster at the start of the race means nothing if you cannot sustain it. And Suzuka is one of the worst places for this weakness. Long, loaded corners, continuous lateral stress, tires that never get a break. If your degradation is even slightly worse, it will show, and it will grow. Now here is where things connect in a way most people don't expect, because the straight line problem and the degradation problem are not separate. They are linked. If Ferrari is pushing harder on energy deployment to compensate for lack of speed, they are stressing the system more. If they are adjusting setup to reduce drag, they might be sacrificing tire stability. If the balance shifts even slightly, the tires pay the price. And once the tires go, everything else collapses. So what Ferrari is really trying to do is not just add speed. They are trying to rebalance the entire car without breaking what already works. And that is one of the hardest things to do in Formula One, because every gain has a cost. Every solution creates a new variable, and every variable must be controlled. Now add one more layer to this: pressure, because this is not happening mid-season. This is happening at the very beginning of a completely new regulation era. A car designed from zero, a project that started with one goal: to get ahead early, and instead, they are reacting, adapting, trying to close a gap that already exists. And that changes everything, because when you are leading, you refine. When you are chasing, you take risks. And what Ferrari is doing right now feels like a calculated risk, bringing an upgrade that could fix their biggest weakness, but also expose new ones. And that leads to the moment that will define everything. Not qualifying, not practice, the race, the long runs, the final phase of the stint, where the car is no longer fresh, where the tires are no longer perfect, where energy management becomes critical. That is where the truth will appear. That is where we will know if Ferrari actually solved the problem, or just made it harder to see at the beginning. And the most important part is that by the time we find out, it will already be too late to change it.